Something was very wrong here, long before anyone dared to say it out loud, because the house stood on that quiet street as if it did not belong to the present, its shape unchanged while everything around it slowly moved forward in time, and people passing by often felt the urge to look away, not out of fear exactly, but because the place demanded too much attention, as if it noticed them noticing it. And when the man first arrived, he seemed like someone who fit naturally into an earlier decade, dressing in modest, old-fashioned clothes, carrying himself with a reserved posture, polite but distant, the kind of person who answered questions briefly and never volunteered information. And at first, nothing about his presence caused concern. Yet gradually, the atmosphere around the house began to shift in subtle ways, ways that could not be pointed to directly, but were felt all the same. Because neighbors noticed how the windows remained dark during the day and faintly illuminated late into the night, how the curtains never moved as if no breeze was allowed inside, and how the street itself felt quieter whenever the house came into view, as though sound had learned to lower its voice out of respect or caution. Inside, the house revealed its true nature slowly, room by room, with furniture arranged neatly but never touched, objects placed with intention yet never disturbed, and dust settling evenly across surfaces like a careful record of time passing without interruption, while the hallway seemed longer than the exterior suggested, stretching forward in a way that distorted distance, causing footsteps to fade too quickly and echoes to die before they should. And the man often paused there, standing beneath the dim ceiling light, listening, not for any particular sound, but for the absence of one, as if silence itself was trying to communicate. And when he reached the living room, he would sometimes sit without turning on the lamp, allowing the shadows to claim the corners, watching them closely as if expecting them to shift on their own. And though nothing ever moved openly, the feeling that something was present remained constant, pressing gently but persistently against his awareness. The woman who visited occasionally sensed it too, though she never spoke of it directly, standing near the window with moonlight falling across her face, her expression distant and uneasy, eyes fixed on the darkness outside as if it offered some form of explanation. And when she turned back toward the room, her gaze lingered on empty spaces, her posture tense as though she were careful not to disturb something unseen. And she once remarked that the house felt occupied even when it was quiet, not in the way a person occupies a space, but in the way a memory does, lingering without shape or sound. And though she tried to laugh it off later, the unease never fully left her, returning each time she crossed the threshold, tightening her chest until she stepped back outside and felt the weight lift slightly. Along the walls hung old photographs, their edges worn, their surfaces faded, each one capturing a moment that felt incomplete, faces staring slightly away from the camera, expressions fixed between recognition and fear, as if something stood just beyond the frame, something they could see but were unable to acknowledge openly. And the man found himself studying these photographs more often than he intended, drawn to them by a sense of familiarity he could not explain, occasionally touching the frames as though expecting warmth, only to find them cold. And once, late at night, he realized with a sudden clarity that the photographs were not memories, but witnesses, records of moments when the house had been fully aware of itself, when it had chosen to observe rather than remain silent. As time passed, the man's routine began to unravel, his sleep growing lighter, his movements slower and more deliberate, pausing frequently in doorways, listening, breathing carefully, convinced that if he moved too quickly, he might disturb something that preferred not to be noticed. And he admitted quietly to a friend that the house followed him, not physically but attentively, that when he entered a room he felt as though he was arriving second, that whatever occupied the space had already been there waiting. and though he never claimed to see anything directly, he described the sensation of being guided gently but firmly towards certain rooms, certain corners, certain moments of stillness, as if the house itself were attempting to show him something without revealing too much at once. Visitors continued to feel it too, each describing the same symptoms in different words: a pressure in the chest, a sudden desire to leave, a certainty that staying longer would invite something irreversible, and none of them ever returned willingly, their relief evident the moment they stepped back onto the street. While inside the house, the air remained unchanged, patient and undisturbed, as though time meant nothing there. And on some nights, neighbors claimed to see silhouettes drifting slowly behind the windows, shapes that paused briefly before moving on, too deliberate to be reflections, too calm to be imagination. And though no one could confirm what they saw, everyone agreed on one thing: that the house never felt empty. Eventually, the man stopped leaving the house altogether, his presence becoming almost theoretical, acknowledged only by the faint lights visible after midnight and the occasional movement behind drawn curtains. And when days passed without any sign of him, concern slowly grew, prompting others to enter the house once more, finding everything exactly as it had been before: his belongings untouched, his clothes neatly folded, the photographs unchanged, the hallway still stretching farther than it should, and no evidence of struggle or departure, no explanation that satisfied reason. Only the overwhelming sense that whatever had been observing him had finished its work. And investigators later described the house as unsettling, not because of what it contained, but because of what it suggested: a place that did not act violently, did not rush, but waited patiently for understanding, and when it was finally satisfied, simply remained. The case was eventually closed, labeled unsolved, filed away among countless others, but the house remained where it always had, unchanged, unmoved, continuing to stand quietly on that forgotten street. And even now, those who pass by feel the same subtle shift in the air, the same unspoken certainty settling in their minds, the realization that whatever remains inside is still aware, still watching, and that something was very wrong here, not because it demanded attention, but because it never needed to.